Hi guys, this week we're going to be exploring measurements, and if I wanted to have a very precise measurement and something was not quite 1 inch, I would need to know what's in between those inches so I could have a very exact measurement. So I've got a ruler right here. You should have a ruler that was on Google Classroom under today's activity. You could print off, or there probably is still one in the back of your math journal. You could cut out and use that as well. If you don't have one of those two options, you can always use a tape measure. And if you use the tape measure, just be careful because there's a lot more little tick marks on the tape measure. And that's so that the measurements can be very precise, especially if you were cutting a piece of wood and you needed to know exactly how big or small it is. So for now, we've got our inch ruler here. You will see I've got my 0 inch mark on the ruler. And do you notice where the end of the ruler is? A lot of times, kids, when they measure, they'll just put the object they're measuring, let's say it's a crayon, and they'll put it, that's my crayon, they'll put it all the way to the edge of the ruler. You don't want to put it to the edge of the ruler unless the 0 mark is at the edge of the ruler. You want to put the object up to the 0 mark. So you would slide your object over a little bit so it starts right here. So just remember that as we move forward. Now take a look at the 0 mark of your ruler and the 1 inch mark of your ruler. Put your finger on the 1 inch part of your ruler if you've got your ruler. If you want to pause me and go get your ruler, you can. If not, just look and see what we're doing. All right, now take a look halfway in between the 0 and 1 inch mark is about here. That's halfway in between 0 and 1 inch. This is a 1/2 inch mark. You can see it zoomed up here. It's a 1/2 inch mark. So if we want to break this down even more, let's think about how long is the distance, I'm going to mark as orange, between 0 and the 1/2 inch mark. How long is that? That's right. That is a 1/2 inch long. All right, let me ask you another question. How long is the distance between the 1/2 inch mark and the 1? How long is that green distance? That's also a 1/2 an inch. Remember, we had earlier this week 2 halves make up a whole. Well, in measurement, it's the same thing. A 1/2 an inch plus a 1/2 an inch would equal a whole inch. All right. Now, let's think about if I were to have a mark that is right here on the ruler. It is past the 1 inch mark. I would start at 0 and I would go all the way past 1 inch to right here. About how long is this green, object that I've got here? How long is that? It's a little bit past the 1 inch mark, but it's not quite to the 2 inch. It's halfway in between. I'm at least at 1 inch, but how many extra? How much extra? I want to be precise, so I'm going to use 1/2 inch marks. That's right, it's 1.5 inches. This is also a 1/2 inch, this amount right here. All right, let's take a look at our 1/2 inches now. And this is kind of going to be a little tricky, especially for our first time, but I want to introduce it to you. Down here, they've marked 1 inch as 4/4 inches. Last week you learned fractions that represent the word quarters. And you probably maybe wrote it like this, or maybe you wrote it like this, 1/4. That's the same as 1/4. If I wanted to be very, very precise and measure in fourths or quarter of an inch, I can. Let's take a look between 0 and 1. How many equal pieces is this ruler broken into from the 0 to 1 inch mark? How many equal pieces was that? 1, 2, 3, 4. This first piece is 1/4 of an inch. In fact, I'm going to do something tricky and write this as my fraction, and that's where I'm going to write 1/4. This piece would be 2/4 of an inch. This piece here, from 0 all the way up to this piece here, would be 3/4. And if I were to talk about this whole part from the 0 all the way up to 1 inch, this is really talking about 4/4. How many 1/4 inches make 1 whole inch? 4/4 inches make 1 whole inch. Now, let's think about the 1/2 inch again. And let's practice. So if you've got your ruler with you, put your thumb on the 0. I'm going to give you an object. And if you want to look up here at mine, you can. Or if you want to put your thumb where that object would end on your own ruler, you can do that too. The object is going to be this long. From here to here. How long is the object? It's past 1 inch, but it's not quite to 2. It's halfway in between 1 inch and 2 inches. It's about halfway. I went past 1 inch, so make sure your answer starts with 1 and 1/2 inch, or I could say inches long. That's right, this object would be 1.5 inches long. All right, let me try another object here. Put your thumb back on the 0. And now the object this time is going to be this long. How long is this object that's orange? So it is past the 1, past the 2 inch mark, past the 3 inch mark, but not quite to the 4. It's halfway in between. So my object would be at least 3 inches, but it's a little more than 3. I want to be precise. Let's measure a little more than 3. 3, and it's halfway in between the 4, the 3 and the 4. So 3.5 inches long. Very good. Give yourself a thumbs up if you feel very confident, and that means you feel very sure about how to measure in 1/2 inches. Thumbs sideways if you're feeling more comfortable, but you're still learning. And thumbs down if you feel like, okay, I still need lots of practice. If your parents nearby, maybe show them where your thumb is so they can kind of see how you're feeling too. Parents are usually pretty good with rulers and tape measures too, because when you own a house or you have an apartment or you have a place to live, you do some measuring when you hang things up on the wall, or see if a bed will fit in a room or something like that. Maybe even some of you guys get measured and you make measurements of your height in your house on a poster, or some people even do it on their door frames. I don't suggest doing it that way unless you already have, but let's try one other tricky one. All right, this time this object is a little bit wonky. It is right there. Here's where this blue object ends. Okay, let's count our ruler. Remember, I lined up to the 0. That's very important. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches, and there's some extra, but it stops right here. What do? I'm measuring to the nearest ½ inch. That says near. Looks like a V. Nearest ½ inch. So what is the nearest ½ inch? Remember, the ½ inch is directly in between the numbers. Here's the ½ inch. Would I say my object is close to 5.5, or is it closer to 5? That's right, it's closer to 5.5. So we're going to say this object is about 5.5 inches long. You're going to notice today when you do your journal page, you may not have exact ½ inch measurements. You may have to decide if it's closer to 5.5 or closer to 5. Or if it was closer to 6, maybe the object ended right here and it was closer to 6. Sometimes the nearest ½ inch can be the nearest inch. If the object ended right here, I would just say, oh, it's so close to 6. Let's just say it's about 6 inches. And sometimes that's rounding to the nearest ½ inch, or moving it and saying it's about the same size as the nearest ½ inch or the nearest inch. All right, so the other thing today, oh, give me a thumbs up. How are you feeling now? All right, I hope what I'm seeing from the computer is that thumbs are up or they're sideways. If it's down, that's okay too. Today is a practice, and when you practice something, it's not going to be perfect. And if it is perfect, then try it, and that's great. Then challenge yourself. If this is coming to you very easily, try measuring in quarters, okay? And those are those little tick marks in between the half and the inch. Remember, there's 4 quarters in every inch, 4 fourths in every inch, 1 inch, 4 quarter inches, 4 fourths. So try that. So if you had an object that was up to here, doop-a-doop-a-doop, let's say it's about here, you could say that object is 3 and how many quarters? Well, it's to the 3rd quarter mark, the 3rd little tick mark there. Not the first one, not the second one, but the 3rd. So I'd say 3 quarters. And that's for those kids that you're getting the hang of this. You understand measurement. Maybe you helped your parents or grandparents build something one time and you really feel comfortable with measuring. Maybe you're a great baker. And bakers measure. They just do it without tape measures usually and rulers. But maybe you feel comfortable using these fractions. So then try the quarters if that's you and you feel comfortable. All right, well, let me show you your journal page, and maybe this will help with some of us too. You've got 4 different objects to measure. They're on the journal page. You can use your journal, you can print it off, or you could get your own crayon, your own eraser, your own marker, your own paintbrush, and measure. We're looking to see, can you measure to the nearest ½ inch? If it is in between, and it is not quite, let's say it's about this long, I don't want you to just say, well, it's 2. Tell me to the nearest ½ inch. It's 1.5. All right. So you'll put in your answer to your crayon length there. Put in your answer to your eraser length here. And now you will use your nearest ½ inch here. Now, you can use it up here too for these first 2 problems. But you can use your nearest ½ inch, like here, to measure the marker and the paintbrush. All right. Now, the last 2 problems, it asks you for a desk. Well, if this were at school, it'd be much easier, huh? So since you're at home, find a table. If you have a cute little desk you want to measure that. If you have a dollhouse desk or a Lego desk or something like that, measure that. Just find a desk or a table. Something like that will be fine. All right, that's my desk. And measure it. Remember, your ruler will start the 0 will not be right at the end of the ruler. So make sure you start at the 0. Tell us about how many inches long is your desk, and use the nearest half inch to help find a precise measurement. Last question. We're comparing the crayon and the eraser. So whatever you put for number 1 and number 2, you're going to decide which one was the longer object, the crayon or the eraser. And just by looking at them, you might even be able to tell, unless you chose your own and they might be shaped differently. It says the crayon is about blank inches longer than the eraser. So how many inches longer is the crayon than the eraser? You might have to take your ruler and line it up to the edge of the eraser and stop when it gets to the edge of the crayon. And see on your ruler. And this is just a pretend drawing, so don't look at mine and think, oh, she's giving us the answer. No, I wouldn't do that. That's not helping you. But let's look and see, and you might be able to tell how long to the nearest half inch the crayon, how much more long it was than the eraser. So you would write in your answer there. Now today's just a practice, so you guys are going to try your best and call it a day. Now if you get excited, go measure more things around your house. Use the nearest half inch. Measure your dog, measure your feet, measure your pinky fingers, measure your people in your family. Unless it's getting irritating to them, then don't do that. So have fun, explore, and remember we're looking for the nearest half of an inch. All right, you guys got this. Good luck.